Okay, my apologies there. We were having a little bit of technical difficulty there. Simran was saying it's a 222 energy. I think she was right with that. But this is our Facebook Live event. I'm Christopher McClure, and here's Simran, who's most recently the writer of Living, the Seven Blessings of Human Experience. If you want to catch up today to learn more about this amazing title, groundbreaking, it's life-changing. But first, I want to talk a little bit about Simran. So she's a globally recognized speaker and catalyst for love and humanity. As an example of New World experience of aliveness, she advocates for the visionary and mystic embodiment of each person while engaging in individuals with their embrace of the darkest of themselves to uncover their brilliance of life. In its brand new trilogy, Simran reveals incredible insight after having gone through the discovery of multidimensional living that brought awareness to a powerful set of blessings, solutions, and graces that not only impact individual humanity, but also individuals' capacity to change the world. The books in this series are Living, which we're talking about today, and then Being, the seven illusions of the real personal power, purpose, and peace, and then Knowing, the seven human expressions of grace. So today's our Living Day. We're living vigorously today. Simran, you're a number one rated archived syndicated host of America's 1111 Talk Radio and host of 1111 Interviews, and a publisher of Novelist Award-winning 1111 Magazine. You're the author of accolades with the EPI and IPA Gold Award-winning Conversations with the Universe. Your journey to enlightenment and the EPI Gold Award, your journey to love. You create art, books, and online courses to bridge humanity's experience and expressions. And along, you're also a TEDx speaker and is creator of the one-woman show, The Rebel Road, connecting the dots from what was to what is. So, that said, we are embracing living in the seven blessings of the human experience. Thanks for coming on here. I'm really excited to talk about this title. As I mentioned, I finished reading the finished work on Sunday, so I'm brimming with questions, and I'm sure our audience is as well. So what's the pieces of your new book here? Why did you write it? Why did you bring it to us?
Well, first, I want to say thank you to you, Chris, for stewarding this, for your team, for midwifing it, for Red Feather, for being an incredible publisher, and Schiffer Publishing. I'm absolutely certain that these books found the home they were meant to go to. When I wrote these books, I had kind of had a conversation with Spirit and said, look, I'll write them, but I'm not going to go look for a publisher. You're going to have to bring the person to me.
Really?
With the experience I've been through, I don't have it within me to go searching for a publisher. So if you want them out in the world, bring that publisher to me. And you were brought to me, and I was brought to you, and it was this magical experience, which just goes to show and prove that if we follow through with life as it has been given to us, then our Dharma unfolds, we're led down the specific paths, and that's part of what led to not only writing Living, but the rest of this trilogy. I think so many people have questions about life, about how to get through certain experiences, about some of the challenging things. We've been through some hard times. You know, COVID has really rocked people, in the pandemic, or the financial markets and the political world, and healthcare, not to mention relationships and jobs, kids and everything else that we deal with. You know, there are just certain aspects of being human that can be hard and challenging and obstacles. And I was guided to write a book to say, don't just push through stuff. Don't just gloss over everything that happens in your life. What if that is the path to your Dharma? And I found for me, with the experiences I was going through, since I was willing to commit to those places, it actually led me to places far beyond I could have imagined.
I see. Yeah. Well, you're very, very correct. And the world's kind of been through the ringer the last 2 years, and they need something like this to be able to. I like how you express to, like, through this process they find their Dharma or their duty, so I like that aspect too. I mean, we're all looking for that too. We're all trying to find what that purpose is, right? Like, really, why we're here, what it is, and I think it starts to talk about that, really, in a very fundamental way, not just in a superficial way. I'm not saying that other books are superficial, but it really gets to the heart of things. So, and within that too, you kind of say that that human beings are like they're technologically based, or technology themselves. So, what do you exactly mean by that? And you're saying, how are we a technology unto ourselves?
We are technology. We are energy. We are nature, just like everything that is out there. And if we will understand first and foremost that we're energy and we are these conduits, then we begin to understand that we operate just like the weather. And so we would not stop a rainstorm from happening. We would not stop the wind from blowing. We would not stop the snow from falling.
Mm-hmm.
Yet there's some part of us that when the tears start coming, we've been conditioned into believing, I got to hold those back. I can't show those to people. Or when we're grieving, I have to get over this. I have a certain amount of time I'm allowed to grieve. Or even when we're celebrating, we celebrate so quickly that we never embody and ground into the moment that we're in. And so it's really necessary for people to slow down, to move not so fast, because the divine or the life plan is trying to catch up with us. And if we're wanting to be used well by life, truly used well, not
Mm-hmm.
the direction that our ego wants to go, not the direction that our identity is trying to force or that our persona believes is what we're meant to do, but
Mm-hmm.
truly wanting to be devoted to the journey of the soul and be
Mm-hmm.
a part of life's beauty and tapestry that is trying to unfold, then that means that we must meet the experiences that we encounter in a really devotional and present way. And so that's what I hope with all of my work, but specifically with these three books, to slow individuals down enough that they're present with the beauty of themselves and the beauty of every moment without judging them. Because I think we judge the things that come our way, and that's part of the problem.
Right. Slowing down is a very important aspect, I think, of any spiritual growth, because you have to take time to really listen to the spirit. Yeah, I was thinking of like, I think this book is designed really for anyone from any tradition. So if you think of like, you go in maybe Christian circles, it's like letting go and letting God. And so this is maybe letting go and letting the universe, or letting however you want to conceptualize that, or call that, or name that. But it's a similar property, right? Where it is just like, allowing spirit to work through you. And like you say, being that conduit, right? And being open to being that, and open to, where that goes as well. So also slowing down. I was remarking before we started broadcasting here about how you read this. So I tried not to cram it. So it took about 2-3 weeks. So but even then, I was like, oh, I'll probably go back and reread it. With my dog version here, I was saying, and it's really beaten up. But the great thing about this, just to put my other hat on, is just like it held up really well. It's super sturdy, so that's good. It's a good tool. But yeah, I know I'll go back and reread it again, and maybe take more time with each of the different blessings. So if we could go through the blessings a little bit. So I'll just read it. So it's life and challenge and conflict and chaos and obstacles and darkness and death. Now on the surface, oh wow, that sounds really scary. That sounds awesome. But now there's a way that the purposefulness of each of those blessings is really thoroughly explained in the chapters themselves. So as you say, I mean, they are quite unorthodox. So why would people embrace this?
Exactly, right? That's not what we think of blessings. We think
No,
of
exactly.
things as
Yeah.
these things that light us up and make us happy, and
Yeah.
we call good events that happen in our lives, and
Right.
those are the things we want. So why would anyone want to talk about these kinds of things?
Yes.
I was really guided to write the manual I wish I had. I was going through a really dark and challenging period, and it was a period that actually lasted over 7 years. And these books, as they came in, I had no plans of writing any books. I was actually going through a very, very deep grieving process that was lasting a very long time. I was having a difficulty getting past it because my worst fear had come to life. And when that worst fear comes to life and you're in a state of grief, we can either do what life has conditioned us to do, or what society has conditioned us to do, and say, okay, I'm going to get over it, I'm going to get busy and distract ourselves. But instead, I decided I'm going to commit to this place, and I'm not moving until life tells me to move. There must be something in this. There must be some gold in this. And so I let myself follow the course. Now, I'm not telling anyone to take 7 years to follow the course, because I've kind of drilled it down so that it is this how-to manual. But had I had this information as I was going through, I could have leveled up in different octaves of my own beingness, my own knowingness at a little bit better rate. And I could have understood how the process was going to unfold better. And so when we encounter things, life is a blessing. And within life, because we are supposed to encounter everything within that scope of blessings, we are going to either take the straight route, which is what rarely any of us do because of our conditioning. We end up taking the scenic route. And that's a windy pathway with lots of detours and obstacles and challenge and chaos. But what I discovered is it actually is the cycle. If you follow through with a choice and you stay with it, life will then take you to the blessing of challenge. It will then take you to the blessing of obstacles and chaos and darkness and death, because we are here to die repeatedly to who we are, to return to the naturalness of the technology of being human, the energy, the truth, the growth, the wisdom, the divine nature that we are. And so I wanted to let people know that when you encounter these sorts of blessings, that there actually is something far richer inside of them. We already have kind of those quips that people say, God only gives you what you can handle. Or, there's always growth, or there's always something you'll gain out of every experience. So we already kind of know this. We look for the silver linings in certain things, but what we tend to do is push past them, that we actually miss the gold resting in there. And so that's where I'm really wanting to take people as they move through these different blessings. And I think you'll know if you have gone through the cycle, if you get to the place of real darkness where you can't see, where you have to follow by faith and not by sight. And when you reach that place of death where the ego death has to come, and some part of you has to die so that you can become larger than what you are. We don't realize that our identities actually make us smaller and more limited and keep us from the enormous divine creative capacity that each one of us are. And we will rebirth again and again and again. So this book is to tell people how to go through that cycle, to be able to rebirth into someone larger than themselves.
Yeah. No, it's moving through them is important. I think, and you say necessary. I don't know, it's really to get to the next level. Really, it's interesting too. As I was reading, I think I identify where I'm at. In the so I'm not there yet. But no, I was like, there was a certain point. I was like, oh, I'm there. I'm in there in the process too. And ironically enough, right now I'm actually listening to the Dark Night of the Soul, St. John of the Cross, and so there's some dovetailing there with some of the messaging and things. But that's the great thing about this, is that it doesn't have to be any particular point of view, because it is kind of a manual for anybody really to understand, no matter what their upbringing is, their particular nomenclature that they grew up with. This is put in language that anyone can really digest.
I love that you said that you could see where you are, because in the beginning of the book, I actually tell people all the different ways they can read this. This is not a book that you're going to breeze through quickly. It's not designed that way. It's meant to be a devotional guide that you keep by your bedstand. And for some people, they're going to start from page 1 and read daily a few lines, a paragraph, a page, and let that be digested, because the book will work within you. For other people, they might just like the bold quotes as they move through the book, and let those be something that they meditate on. For other people, there are specific questions underneath each chapter title, and that can be contemplated on. Or there are sections at the back of each of the sections that they can move through and ask themselves those questions and journal. Or they can look at the grids. The grids are something that were, I don't like to use the word downloaded, because it was something that streamed through, but it was so clear to me when it did. Those grids actually will tell a person the exact path that their soul is wanting them to move through, to encounter the different aspects of themselves, that the places that need restoration, the places that need replenishment, but also how to tap into that energy, the truth, the growth, the wisdom, so that every level of them does get transformed, because each level has its own question that you're answering.
Right. I'm glad you brought up the grids, and I just opened to the third lesson, which is blessing of conflict. And so within here, you have a grid here, and that was somewhere I was trying to just like boil down into where how to work through that. Could you maybe illustrate how to work through the grids and what they're for?
Yeah, so underneath each blessing, there are actually 7 levels that we move through in the process.
Yeah.
And so if you're just encountering the book Living, those 7 layers will illustrate a path. And that's a path that we are to engage at that time. So for example, for conflict, the path is of the visionary. That is of a time where you have to see something that doesn't exist yet. You're not going to act on it. You're not going to necessarily move on it, but you are going to hold that vision and really see clearly what it is that you're trying to create. And then what that reflects is a certain energy, and that's the energy of air. And air has to do with the breath. It has to do with the winds of change. It has to do with all of the unseen, the intuitive within us. So as we're moving through conflict and we're being the visionary, it means that we have to be more heightened in terms of how we sense the energy of air. And then the third place is the growth area. And that growth area has to do with the mind. So obviously, to end up in conflict, we must have been in a certain mind state, a certain way of thinking and seeing the world. So now it's time to fine tune that mind and really understand the belief systems that have come about to get us there. And that's where we're awakening the mind to something new. And then we move into restoration, where that technology of truth has to kick in. And we tap into essence. Essence has our truth. And when we get beyond the mind and we allow ourselves to see the visionary experience, essence can drop in. In a sense, that's what happened with these books. Essence dropped in and provided me the contents for these books, even though I was in a place of my own dark night of the soul. So we could be a conduit for spirit. No matter where we are, we will be used well. And as we restore ourselves with that truth in essence, then comes the wisdom element of technology. And that wisdom comes through witnessing. It comes through witnessing the conflict within, witnessing who we're being, how we're being, witnessing who the other is, witnessing how the world is moving while we have stepped back and gotten still. And as that reveals something to us, we then invite unification. And in that particular case with the visionary, we're inviting the creative aspect. So there comes the aspect where we start to move into inspiration. Still not action. That's the one point that I want to get people to is we move too quickly into action. This is very much a divine feminine path where we have to sit and allow these energies to marinate so that we actually allow the divine masculine then to be inspired to act. And what that allows are the gifts. Each of the blessings have certain inherent gifts that we all have. And in the blessing of conflict, if we move through those 7 levels, we then open up and allow the gifts of life, love, and compassion. And every single blessing has its own layering of gifts. And that was one of the most beautiful of the experiences I came through as I moved through each of the blessings in my own personal life. So I hope that clears up a little bit what the grids are for. And then as the future books come, you not only can go vertically down the grid of living, but you can go across the grids into being and knowing and seeing how to drop an octave or go up an octave to access different levels of self, which is why the book is written with the 3 levels of you or self that it's written.
Yeah, that's very helpful to understand how that kind of works. And then how does that then, prepare one for like the next level or the next blessing, which is
So as you move through each blessing and you allow the gifts that are there to be created, you've awakened, revealed, restored all the levels of your own technology internally, you will naturally move into the next blessing. It happens automatically. There's nothing that you have to do to make it happen. Once you've moved through darkness, the next step is death. Once you've moved through chaos, there are going to be certain obstacles to get past. There just is a certain path that it follows. And
Mm-hmm.
along with that winding path that it follows, the book tells you when to be visionary, when to be humanitarian, when you are to embody the sage, when you are to tap into the mystic. So it
Mm-hmm.
really lets you know who and how to be in the different stages you encounter. And that level of clarity can really help an individual no matter what they're moving through. So if they are in the middle of one of these blessings, let's say, like you said, they're encountering the blessing of chaos, they could
Mm-hmm.
start there in the book and they'll know right where they are and what it is that they are to do to move to the next step.
Fascinating. Yeah, no, that's extremely helpful, and I definitely can see how that it is like a manual, really. So to use, as it's like if we're technology, this is like this is the how-to book.
Right? Our computers, everything comes with a book.
Yeah, they come with a manual,
But
yeah, people don't, except me, right? Now we have it.
now we
Now it's
have the
here.
full
Now we
guide,
have
free
one of
book.
them. Right. So, now that you use very interesting patterns throughout the way it's written. One is that there are many repetition of words. So like you. Could you explain kind of like the reasoning behind that? What is that exactly? Why is it written that way?
Yes, as I was moving through my own experience, what I started to discover was that I was starting to see the world from three different lenses. It felt like there were different people inside of me, the same me, but different versions of me. And
Mm-hmm.
that's part of the multidimensional experience. And so within the book, it is written so that, number one, you become really cognizant of the different lenses that exist within you always at the same time. So the shadow monster self, animal self, is always present within us.
Mm-hmm.
The human, the robotic self, the conditioned self is always present within us. The
Mm-hmm.
fire, golden, illuminated self is always present within us. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes one or the other is more at the forefront, or two have combined together to come to the forefront. And that's why the book is written in that way. And I remember when we had our meeting last week, you said that because it's written in that way, that in itself kind of slowed down your reading. And
Exactly.
that's part of the intention for that. But you become very aware of the different levels of yourself because you start to see the small self, all lowercase, or you start to see the robotic conditioned self, capital S, with the lowercase ELF, or you start to recognize the higher humanity within you, and that's the all caps SELF. And so it is an interesting way to not only look at the self, but as you move through the book, it conditions the mind to realize that you're not who you think you are. You're not just this one identity. You're not just this one dimension. There are many dimensions. So you begin to look at your experiences and life and other people in a much bigger way, which will create more compassion, more unconditional love, and greater service in the world as you move through these lessons.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah. So with those, would you call them like archetypal in a sense, almost, or more just just different elements of yourself? Really? How would you conceptualize
I
that
would I would say they are different dimensions of us.
dimensions? Okay.
Yes, I think that they could align with archetypes. I think there are going to be many different archetypes that could fit in each one, but
Right.
I believe these are different dimensions of us. And there's a reason that the world looks the way it looks. There's a reason that we are having some of the challenge and the chaos or the things that feel scary to us. There's a reason, and being goes more into those illusions of things that are with the way the world appears. And so
Mm-hmm.
for us to understand that we're creating a world from our lowercase self,
Mm-hmm.
and that is why the world looks the way it does. But if we were to move to a higher octave
Mm-hmm.
of self, either capital S, rest of the lowercase, or all caps, then all of a sudden we'll actually create a change in the world. And so by an individual moving through this book and the rest of the series, that is how they become the change in the world we wish to see. We can be the change. One individual absolutely can be the change, but it's requiring the courage, the willingness, and the deep love of self and others
Mhm.
Do this kind of work, but it doesn't have to be hard work. That's why I say this can be a devotional that's by the bedside. It can be a few lines at a time each day. It can be one paragraph each day. But if you're willing to do the work, you really are not only serving your humanity, you're serving then global humanity.
Right. No, I think it takes those concepts really, which are very fundamental and important, and makes them livable, living, if you will. So it reminds me of, and I might be way off here, but it's a little bit of kind of like the concept of Satchitananda, where it's basically like, so you're living being, so it kind of like woven together, which is a Vedic concept, right? And so it's like that, but you don't have to be familiar with any of that really, because it takes, it's just basically, this is more like, okay, this is more nuts and bolts. You don't have to get into the philosophy of things or the or the metaphysics of things. Well, yes, it is metaphysics, but you really are able to just it boils it down and it translates, I think, really some of those concepts into things that you can really approach too. So how does it really serve the individual and world healing then in itself? How does it, the collective healing that we're trying to do? You started to touch on that a little bit. Could you maybe expand on that?
Absolutely. The reason I wrote the book in this way, my story is not in this book because my story really doesn't serve anyone. My story would just be entertainment. I wrote
Right.
this book so that individuals could apply their own story because that's what counts.
Mm-hmm.
So that they could take their own life and place it within the pages of this book and within the blessings that they are encountering. Because whatever is going on within us is creating the reflection of the world outside of us. And if you look at 8 billion people, and if many of those people inside of themselves are carrying regret and remorse and resentment and hate and some love and some joy and most fear, then there's no wonder that the world looks the way it looks.
Mm-hmm.
But if each one of us is willing to just dive into our own life exactly where we are, facing the things, the people, the conflicts, the challenges, the experiences that we're having, and be willing to do that type of internal exploration, then we change our own humanity. We tap into a level of humanity that is greater than what most people are tapping into. I think that one of the most powerful aspects of this book is how it supports people in accessing layers of themselves that they don't want to. We have an epidemic of mental illness that is going on. There is a degree of depression across this planet, and especially with the things that have taken place with the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
people, not working or whatever the political atmosphere has done over the years for people, financial markets, global things, the threats of war, these things cause depression and anxiety, but we push it down. We have not been taught to feel. We've not been taught to truly embrace every emotion and feeling and understand what's going on in the body. And when we really allow ourselves to open to that, then we tap into humanity. Otherwise, we're not really tapping into humanity. Humanity is book 3. That's knowing. This is living. This is conditioned, robotic, where we're asleep, where we're truly asleep.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say even those of us that call us light workers, what I discovered over the last 7 years is there's a lot of beautiful people doing beautiful work out in the world, including myself. I did some wonderful things through 1111 Media and the radio and magazine and the other books that I've written. But now that I've gone through my experience and written these books, I look back and I know that was artificial light. It was beautiful. It lit up the space, but it was artificial lighting. Real light is in the darkness. And that's where we all have to go because that's where the light is needed. And our world right now needs us all to do that. And that's much of the reason that these books guide so gently and lovingly and by the hand, but with radical honesty and the support to be truly courageous, to stay with it.
No, I like that. The real light is in the darkness. Personally for myself right now, identifying where I'm coming from is, really to embrace full spirituality is to embrace the darkness, to embrace the visceral, uncomfortable things. Really, it is, so, and not just to break, but I want to say love them. Is that right? So, or to appreciate, I should say appreciate, perhaps, those aspects. And as you're saying, as you started off saying, um, what they teach, right, to be able to help to move through to the next stage. And so, I'd say for those of us who didn't have this previously, and we just been kind of like, stumbling along, it's nice to have something sort of, so a clear perhaps guide here, with this to be able to really illuminate those things that, yeah.
I think one misconception that has been put out there about spirituality is this idea that we need to ascend, that we need to get out there, that we need to go galactic. And we didn't come here for that. Like, why would we incarnate in bodies if that's what we were here to do? What we need to do is descend into the body. We need to embody this very vessel that we have been given,
Right.
because wholeness is half light, half shadow. It is the two of them. And when those two can merge, be integrated and married, then all of a sudden there is wholeness. That's the birthplace of compassion, peace, and unconditional love. And so it is necessary for us to be willing to go to those places and, in a sense, even love them. It starts with acceptance, it starts with embrace, but when we can really allow ourselves to love ourselves through anything, all of a sudden there starts an alchemy, an absorption process, a disintegration of everything that was false. And these three books, starting with this one, is that disintegration, that absorption, that true unknowing of all that we've known, so that each individual can slip back into their naturalness, their divinity, their true wholeness, and see their essence, feel their essence, and know their essence from the inside.
I think, yeah, that's a fantastic point. I agree, really, with the idea of constant ascendance, because it's only half the story, really, right? Because it's really a matter of, because if you get too high, then the first big thing that comes your way, you're gonna get blown away. Right?
Yes.
You have to have that root to be able to, you can still ascend. You have to have that elongation, right? Kind of so where you are rooted well, and you embrace and appreciate, your humanity. And so a lot of, there's a lot of negation sometimes of humanity, I think, through the process. To be more spiritual, to disengage from some humanity sometimes, whereas this is challenging people to embrace that, to truly live, fully live, and so they can better understand and really get to that next stage. So, and I think,
yes.
yeah, so that's what I'm getting from that, and I agree with the importance of that as well. And so you mentioned also too with this as an accounting. What do you really mean when you're saying that an accounting? How would you define that?
There were many times over the past 7 years I kept wondering, how did I end up in this experience? Why am I going through this? This is so excruciating, and it's hard, and the tears won't stop, and I'm not quite understanding. And there was a huge intersection of an inner conflict within me, and it had to do with the intersection of man's law and divine law, and how those come together. And through the course of my experience, what I started to realize is every single one of us plays such an integral part in a greater balancing of life. We're so easily focused in on just our small lives, on our set of circumstances and experience. But we have no idea how we are part of a larger accounting, a larger story that is taking place, that is balancing masculine and feminine energy. I remember as I was going through the 7-year process, There was an experience at a church here in Charleston, the Mother Emanuel Church, where there was a shooting. And there was so much that was going on around that, and people were questioning why that happened. Or many people that have been shot or killed, or different social situations that have taken place over the last 7 years, and people become outraged, and there are protests, and there are all these types of things.
Right.
But if we took an overarching, larger view, we would see that this is energy, and that energy is trying to equilibrate itself. It's trying to rebalance, and that it's requiring certain people, certain players to enact that. We could see that in the political sphere. The same thing, regardless of what, group people were associated with, whatever took place was part of the balancing. I fully believe it didn't matter who ended up in office. We would have had the same outcome, because we just needed to have the balancing. And so one or the other was going to create the same scenario. And when we start to look at life in that way, that if we're just focusing on the life we're given, then we're actually being part of that balancing and that accounting, that credit and debit that's trying to take place. But when we resist and we interfere by going off in our own directions because our egos and our wills tell us to go do something, then all of a sudden we send that accounting off kilter, and the universe is then scrambling to try to catch up with us, to realign us, and then we encounter more of these amazing blessings.
These amazing blessings. Yeah.
If you don't want to encounter these blessings, then you have to follow up with what it's asking of you.
Right. Yeah. No, it's interesting. It's like, okay, well, no, if you go if you're off your own path, it's like, okay, well, here's more of that. So just come on, so until you get the message, I guess, keeps those things get put in your way, or the signs are illuminated. It's like, no,
yes.
So that's how I guess that works. So so with this here, this is the first of 3. And
yes.
So how is each one then kind of different? So we have then being coming up next in a few months, and then knowing after that. So what's distinctly different really about each one of them? Could you go into that a little bit?
Yes. Living is really about where you are right now, the life that you are living, what you're going through. And it will refer to living in the lowercase, which means your deeply unconscious self that you might not even be aware of. It's unconscious because you're unconscious. And then there's living with the capital L, which again is that kind of conditioned robotic self where we do what we think we have to. We do what's in front of us, so to speak, because parents or society tells us to. We do what our cultural norms are. So that's another aspect of living. And then there's the all caps living, which is truly stepping onto the path of higher presence and our Dharma and our true alliance with spirit. And so that's to help people dissolve and release these coverings that we are carrying that keep us from knowing that higher self and that humanity that we're here to access. Being the 7 illusions that derail personal power, purpose, and peace releases May 28th. And that book is all about the illusions that we have been caught up in, that we don't realize are illusions, but they control us. And a couple of those are things like time, money, evolution. We believe in these concepts. We let them imprison us. We stay in fear because of them. And so we don't know how to get out of this kind of hamster on the wheel roller coaster ride that we tend to be on. So being takes people into the underworld. It takes people into the depths to explore how are you being. It's not this spiritual being of I'm going to be still and I'm going to be present and I'm going to om on a mountaintop and I'm going to go take a bubble bath. That's not the being I'm talking about. That's in there. That's the capital B, lowercase EING. But I really want people to see the face of their shadow, to see the animal, feel the animal inside of them, understand what hunger is and how that drives them. And then knowing it produces at the end of the year is the 7 human expressions of grace. And so as we move through living and we encounter that conditioned self, and then we move through being, And we learn how to love that shadow, and that glimmer, and that monster, that demon that lives inside of us, and we allow that to live. We move to a place of knowing where we start to learn how to let go of the things in our lives that keep us stuck. And in doing so, we embrace our humanity. We embrace the nature of our divine self. And we understand that it's okay to have the full range of colors, emotions, and so these two books are an experience. They're not just a reading that you go through. They are literally the experience of you in the most rich, loving, and beautiful way.
Well, that's I can't wait for the next one. Really, right? Actually, couldn't I? So, but yeah, no, that's beautiful. They're all coming out this year, so someone can get into this and just really just go through. Just take their time, but go through each one to really, thoroughly digest and marinate too on what you're putting forth in these, and be able to understand what the manual is saying, to be able to ascend there.
I appreciate how you have staggered these out, because people that are getting living right now, to go through this between now and May, and then to step into being, it will create an energetic wave across this world to have people lit up from the inside out. And to go back to your statement about the root, and really bringing that light down and grounding it,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, that's what this work is.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and then to move through being for the next few months until knowing comes out, people have experienced some profound things and actually access their authenticity, their inner authority, their power, their presence, and deep levels of peace.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm really excited for what's next. It's going to be a wonderful year for everybody who is able to get into these and understand them and read them. And so, if someone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way? Social media or email?
I am on all the social
All the
medias, and
socials.
I'm on all the socials, and also my website, iamsimran.com, which also has a link to my socials. So anywhere that feels right for people, they can go and access me there. And then 1111 Radio is online weekly on Tuesdays at 11, and 1111 Magazine comes out regularly, and that's another way that people can also access.
Amazing. And with that too, I was just reminded that this happened on 2/2/22 at 2. How it came together, and it was perfect. It didn't start off this way. This is how it's manifested, and it seems even better somehow. It seems it's just right, honestly, for it to kind of come together this way. And boy, I really appreciate you doing this here today. It won't be the last time. I'm sure we will do other talks here for being and knowing. But really, thanks again, and everybody tuned in to this. It was really nice talking about this and getting a better understanding of it. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you all did as well. So now, Living is available here on redfeathermbs.com. It's available on shipperbooks.com. It's available everywhere you want to go to find it. Amazon. But yeah, so just go out and get the manual on living in 7 lessons. So hope everyone enjoyed this, and I hope you all have a beautiful day.
Happy 222.
Happy 222. Bye now.